When it comes to American military action, how much is too much? Washington has expressed profound concern over North Korea's nuclear weapons program, while Pyongyang claims this weaponry is a deterrent against a possible military invasion by the US or its ally South Korea. It's a situation made more tense by the visit of US Vice President Mike Pence to the region.
The US has also begun amassing considerable firepower in the seas near North Korea. Critics have pointed to the military build-up as a sign of Trump's gunboat diplomacy, characterized by threats and bullying. China, Russia, Iran, and most of the world's nations have expressed concern over America's war games. They have appealed to Washington for peace and diplomacy, not war and destruction. The US has even been accused of asserting an aggressive policy of imperialism. Adding to that impression is the American Vice President's visit, amid rising concerns that the simmering tensions on the Korean Peninsula would eventually turn into a full-scale military confrontation. Russia has repeatedly warned the United States against any unilateral action, saying any response to Pyongyang's nuclear activities should not violate international law. President Trump has asked Beijing to help denuclearize Pyongyang, threatening to act alone if China refuses. The impact of such actions could be fatally destructive for Korea's residents, north and south.
What's the mood towards American military action in Korea, whose North Korean embassy to the United Kingdom is here in central London? And if that military action occurred, who would win? Simple questions with immensely important answers. President Trump recently attacked Syria and dropped the largest non-nuclear bomb ever made on Afghanistan. Is the public in South Korea worried about President Trump? Do they think he will attack North Korea, and why?
I think Trump is unlikely to attack North Korea. There may be a slight possibility, but it's only a possibility. I don't think it will be actualized. Trump is the President of the United States, a country that is intervening in many conflicts and catastrophes around the world. The US also has a very strong tie with South Korea, so I understand that Trump is involved in North Korea issues. But a war, as we can see in Syria, doesn't just take place between two governments. It deeply damages the peoples of the countries and causes casualties. But an actual initiation of a war that brings about violence, not just in the Korean Peninsula, but in the entire world, is not something a US president can do mindlessly. I believe Trump knows that too, and thus won't attack North Korea.
At this moment, I think the possibility is zero, because of the political circumstances around the Korean Peninsula. It won't be easy for the US to unilaterally attack North Korea.
I don't think the US will attack North Korea. The benefit the US gains by attacking North Korea is significantly small compared to that gained by attacking Middle Eastern countries. Furthermore, a direct US attack on North Korea will aggravate the country's military conflict with China and Russia, so I don't think it'll happen.
I think Trump is saying empty words. That aircraft carrier turned out to be heading in the opposite direction. I can't help but suspect that he doesn't mean what he says.
Attacking North Korea will cost the US some loss, so I don't think the US will strike North Korea.
I personally think US will not carry out a preemptive strike on North Korea, but considering President Trump's entrepreneurial style of politics, when he ordered the aircraft carrier to be deployed near the Korean Peninsula, there must have been the intention to influence not only North Korea but also China and other countries, and to show them the new US administration's will and the country's power over the world. The aircraft carrier is an effective tool for that purpose, but Trump can't send it to China, so he sent it to South Korea, a US ally. The issue of THAAD deployment is creating an acute tension among US, South Korea and China.
Trump is only scaring North Korea with a threat because the country is testing nuclear weapons every day and making South Korea nervous. If North Korea does shoot a nuclear missile, South Korea must fight back. We can't just sit and stay still. So I think it's good that the US is deploying weapons in South Korea.
First, I'm not an American, but as a Korean, I'm very much worried about President Trump. First, he lacks philosophy and morality that suit the leader of the most powerful nation of the world. He also lacks expert knowledge in international affairs. Every new US president since the emergence of the North Korean nuclear issue, not just Trump, has considered a military attack on North Korea. But all his predecessors reached the conclusion that such an attack was impossible. The reason is that 20 million people reside in Seoul and the surrounding metropolitan area and are too close to North Korea. The North Korean coastal artillery can cover 40 to 50 kilometers distance, and the long-range artillery up to 180 kilometers. That can put the 20 million population in danger. Military simulation has shown that a huge number of casualties are expected in case of a counterattack of North Korea. That is why previous American presidents have given up on the option and resorted to diplomatic and economic pressure so far. I think Trump is in a similar position. He can never conduct a preemptive strike or bomb North Korea.
The US policy for the Korean Peninsula has been called strategic patience. The Geneva Agreed Framework of 1994 was in effect a makeshift measure based on the assumption that North Korea would collapse. The Obama administration's strategic patience too was in fact a passive policy of waiting North Korea regime's collapse. Since Trump's inauguration, he has been trying to transform North Korea policy for more direct pressure on the country as a reaction to the strategic patience policy. Trump is attempting to achieve a deterrence effect by doing so, and it's a strategy to lead China into pressuring North Korea. If North Korea carries out 6 nuclear tests, there can be a possibility of a US strike, but considering many current conditions, that possibility is very low. What will happen in reality is likely to be a deterrent strategic that also includes China to pressure North Korea.
The USA's last war against the people of Korea caused great embarrassment for American President Truman's administration. How likely does the South Korean public think it is that America could face another humiliating defeat in a Korean war?
I haven't thought that far, but since President Trump is essentially a business person, he could have made that calculation. He may have also been motivated to raise his approval rate, but I think the US is deploying THAAD strictly for the country's own interest. Trump may attack North Korea to protect its citizens and secure its status as the most powerful country.
I think he may have that intention. He used to be a business person. That may have some influence. He could have been partly motivated by economic interest, but I can't be entirely sure. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but he also seems to be just a thoughtless person. Excuse my frankness, but he even seems like a fool sometimes. He only makes business calculations and not political considerations. I suspect he's making half-sighted decisions.
It's possible that Trump has that intention. I think that's strange. What should be a talk between two countries sounds like a threat, so I feel nervous.
I think Trump has a motive like that. THAAD is only manufactured in the US and is yet to be actively marketed. By deploying THAAD in South Korea, US is surely trying to defend South Korea from North Korea, but the other side. A country's military can never be considered separately from its economy. THAAD is a very expensive weapon, and defending South Korea cannot be the only reason for US's deployment of the weapon. Pursuit of economic interest can be a hidden motive. I think THAAD is a tool not only for military security, but also for US's economic profit.
I think we have sufficient reason to believe so. With most US warfare in the Middle East nearing the end, the US arms industry is in need to develop a new battlefield. And honestly, I think the Korean Peninsula has the highest possibility of becoming the next battlefield. So yes, I think we have enough reason to believe Trump has that intention.
Trump is paying attention to North Korea, criticizing and warning North Korea as a newly inaugurated president. but I certainly don't think he's doing it simply so that the US can sell weapons to South Korea or develop new weapons. For the US, the North Korean issue is an important lever against China because they can use her as a way to apply military, political and economic pressure against the Chinese Republic.
Military-industrial complex in the US has a huge power. Neither the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party is free from its influence. Arms exports is even an official agenda in the State Department. Also, traditionally, US have long maintained an economy that operates not on something like trade surplus, but on wars and weapons. So it's a matter of fact that Lockheed Martin had a role in the THAAD issue. As every country has hawks and doves on diplomacy and security issues, US also have hardliners that support the military-industrial complex and moderates that prefer dialogue and negotiation. I think the answer depends on which of the groups gains the upper hand in policy competition.
We asked South Koreans if Korea will unite in opposing American military intervention, or will some in the South support a US North Korean attack, and why?
Although the US is said to be our ally, most South Koreans, I think, would view the US military intervention into the Korean Peninsula very negatively. It may turn out to be 50% for and 50% against, but that's only my speculation.
If North Korea attacks us, we have to fight back. We have to be determined to see either one of the two Koreas collapse. We can't just do nothing. I think we have to fight too. It's good that the US helps us. Of course, the big country should help the small country out. The problem is, though, that North Korea is resisting because China is resisting. If China takes over North Korea, we can all live in peace.
I think the public opinion will become distinctively divided. Under current circumstances, some would actually support US intervention. The US is a close ally of ours. But if you look closely, South Korea doesn't have military sovereignty. Winning it back should be our priority, I think. If the US pulls out of South Korea, I think we'll be exposed to threats of war and severe financial problems. There are many different opinions on this, so it's hard to make a definitive conclusion. But maintaining a good relationship with the US is a better solution.
In reality, most South Koreans don't want the US to have a military presence on the Korean Peninsula because they want peace, not war. When the axe murder incident happened and American soldiers died in the joint security area, the US didn't resort to a military response, despite their threats. So I think it's unlikely.
실질적으로 대다수의 대한민국 사람들은
Due to three-generational power inheritance and spending of nuclear development under Kim Jong-un regime, fear is growing among South Korean public, and South Korean society is becoming more conservative. But while some far-right conservatives who have experienced war express hostile sentiments against North Korea and aggressively argue their willingness to go to war, there are only a small percentage of the population, and the nature of their arguments is emotional. Fewer people would actually want to see a war break out. Majority of citizens want peace, but at a point when North Korea's nuclear provocation becomes serious, a strong deterrence and defense measure will be needed. That is why THAAD, despite controversy over its efficacy, maintains a degree of persuasive power today.
The United States is moving an aircraft carrier and what Trump calls an armada of warships toward the Korean Peninsula in a show of force, which the North sees as a declaration of war. American political analyst Professor Dennis Etler claims that President Barack Obama also had similar policies to intervene, wage proxy wars, and promote regime change. According to Etler, the key issue here is Trump's brinkmanship, designed to create a sense of instability to gain American advantage.
Russia and Iran steadfastly defended Syria in the face of American aggression. Would China defend North Korea in the same way against US aggression? We asked the South Korean public.
I don't want to read too much into his actions. But Trump did make thoughtless remarks, including misogynistic statements, and deserves criticism. The US is a huge and powerful country, and it's only natural that he has public opposition against the remarks he made. But I'm not sure about strike on Syria. Trump alone will know the real motive.
I agree that Trump's use of military force overseas serves the purpose of raising tension and directing the public's eye abroad and away from his domestic political failures.
Yes, I think that's a plausible explanation, not just in the US, but also in Japan. Abe saw his approval rate drop after his wife's involvement in a corruption scandal was publicized. But with the possibility of a war in the Korean Peninsula, his approval rate went back up a little. Some say that Abe successfully turned the public's attention away. I think Trump may be resorting to the same tactic.
That can be a probable motive. I think it's possible that President Trump has that intention. He's poorly received by the American public, so there's sufficient reason for him to act on that motive.
Yes, I think Trump has that intention too, and that makes him even worse. Thinking that he has that intention makes Trump look even worse.
President Trump's policy on the US and South Korea relationship didn't seem especially beneficial to South Korea. In the US's perspective, Trump's behaviour may be understandable to a degree, but I believe it would be good if you can think again about what's right in terms of peace.
The airstrike in Syria was truly a surprise. Although I'm not an American or an expert in American politics, I'm sure Trump considered domestic politics when he decided the attack. And as a result, polls show that his approval rate has gone up a little. So I certainly think there was such a calculation, especially since he failed to repeal Obamacare, which was rejected not only by the Democrats, but also by the Republicans. The motion wasn't even voted on, putting Trump in a rather unfavorable position in American domestic politics. And all politicians, not just in America, but in any country, including South Korea, try and distract the public's attention from failures at home with foreign affairs. Trump learned this tactic works with his airstrike against Syria, and since then he's been speaking more aggressively about North Korea, and by doing so, trying to hide his failures in domestic politics.
As I said earlier, the Obama administration was passive, powerless and ineffective in the North Korea policy. And in the meantime, North Korea kept reinforcing its nuclear development and reached a level of actual threat to the US homeland. Under these circumstances, Trump seems to have chosen to pressure North Korea and ease the threat to the US to reverse his low approval rate.
Presidential elections are coming up soon in South Korea. Would the public like presidential candidates to defend the North and oppose the United States? And why?
It's a very confusing issue. I think South Korea did provide a lot of support to North Korea, and we must have inevitably yielded to the country in some ways. But I think we should now contain the country. Of course, peaceful reunification must be achieved, but we can't risk another war before that happens. We must have summit meetings with our allies and discuss the issue. Under any circumstances, I don't think violence can bring us a peaceful reunification.
North Korea is a country we must reunite with one day, and the current policies devised by the Conservative administration that only raises tensions in the peninsula won't do that. It won't be easy, but I hope to see a more embracing policy than the Sunshine policy that can make North Korean leadership slowly collapse and reunite the two Koreas. It won't be easy to deal with a country like the North, but provoking North Korea and raising tension in the peninsula is not the way.
I think all of the 5 main candidates are showing populist tendencies in their security pledges. I hope they consider the bigger picture. I wish they are not swayed by domestic opinions and make judgments within the context of international politics. I'm concerned about how the presidential campaign is going.
My idea of a desirable North Korea policy is a pluralistic approach. There's lots of talks about the main enemy after the presidential debate. North Korea is indeed an enemy, but as stated in the Constitution, South Korea has a duty to pursue peaceful unification. I think the issue is a diplomatic one that requires various efforts for dialogue and negotiation.
First, for the past 10 years, the Lee Myung-bak and the Park Geun-hye administrations took a hardline stance towards North Korea and made little effort to engage North Korea or to improve the inter-Korean relationship. I suspect the next administration may take a more open attitude, especially now that the US-China conflict or the US-North Korea conflict is aggravating.
I personally think South Korea should be the center of all matters. Reunification should be beneficial to South Korea, and a diplomatic relationship with the US should pursue our national interest, not just the US's interest. South Korea is a sovereign state. For the next administration, engaging and negotiating with North Korea is of course important, but North Korea seems unwilling to solve issues like missile provocations through dialogue. So in that aspect, South Korea needs a president who can take initiative in pressuring North Korea through strategic diplomatic ties with the US and China.
I think the next president must keep in mind the nature of the US and South Korea's relationship, which at the moment only benefits the US. And in North Korea, the peace policies of the past and the efforts to prevent a war are all good. But what's more important is for the president to listen to what the people want.
All presidential candidates are in a tough position. North Korea's nuclear tests, missile development and intercontinental ballistic missiles are problems that any politician will find hard to solve, whoever becomes the president. So it's a tough situation. But during the Park Geun-hye administration, we let go of all leadership over the North Korean issue, which was in the hands of China and the US. Japan also had its hands on the issue, while Russia stepped back a little. Whoever gets elected, the next president needs to regain control over the Korean Peninsula. That control is required in establishing a peace treaty and making North Korea give up on nuclear missiles. And the presidential candidates must speak up more about this issue. Unfortunately, however, candidates seem to think that speaking in support of such leadership doesn't help them win the election. This is not being talked about enough, but especially if a liberal candidate gets elected, South Korea needs to take initiatives in the North Korean issue. So even though presidential candidates can't voice their thoughts as much as they'd like, when the election is over and a liberal president is in office, that president will need to take initiatives in pursuing peace and the reunification of the Korean Peninsula.
South Korea must now escape submission to one side and carry out independent diplomacy with confidence. Towards North Korea, we should now devise an engagement policy similar to the previous Sunshine Policy, along with sanctions and pressure. We must also strive for a transition from the current armistice to the peace treaty through proactive and independent diplomacy. An ideal diplomatic policy would be one that reinforces our geopolitical leverage by keeping balance, while making use of the power states, and that prioritizes inter-Korean dialogue in pursuit of peace system.
Much of the world is concerned about how President Trump's administration is acting because it has shown little regard for international law and has gone to extreme lengths to demonstrate its military might. North Korea has refused to bow to Washington's threats so far.
And so America has escalated tensions on the Korean Peninsula. Vice President Pence has stated all options are on the table, adding, there was a period of strategic patience, but the era of strategic patience is over. But how much patience others have with America and what happens when that patience runs out remains to be seen as the world watches on.